Hey, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, the show where the inner warrior shines in their light. Presented by Praxis 33, the company that aligns your thoughts, goals, and actions to create your best life. I'm your host, Daryl Snow, and today we're going to be talking about love. We're going to be talking about how to keep the honeymoon phase active in your relationship, and we're also going to be talking about helping females with release stress and reconnect with their bodies. And today, to do that, I have Lexy Davis. Lexi is a love embodiment coach, and she's coming to us today from Lisbon. So, Lexi, I appreciate your time and welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
You're currently coming from Lisbon, but that isn't where you got your start. Actually, you're kind of a world traveler and lived in lots of places. Where did you actually grow up?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington,
Okay.
and was born in New York. And then since then, I've lived a lot of different places.
So, I mean, you're fairly young, and for someone to be the world traveler that you are, what got you into exploration like that?
Well, I think one of not so common is that we didn't travel when I was a kid, and all my friends around me were traveling. And then when I got to college, I chose to study abroad. And I went to New Zealand, and from there it was game over. I couldn't stop. So once I got to New Zealand, I knew that as soon as I finished college, I had to go live somewhere else. And so I moved to Australia and lived there for 2 years. And since then, I barely lived in America just because I really like exploring the world.
Well, it's a big world out there, and
Yeah.
to what was your college degree in?
Care, Health, and Society. It was a sociology degree and then a minored in psychology.
Okay. So, how does someone go from the U of A? Because you told me you were in Arizona, and I know you decided to study abroad. And once you do leave the U.S. and see the rest of the world, it is really easy to catch that bug. But how do you go into being a love embodiment coach and also a feminine embodiment coach who helps females, reconnect with their body?
Well, it wasn't a linear journey. Since I was young, I grew up with a single dad, which isn't a typical story. And so I had to grow up really quick, really young. And I was an only child and I lacked that mother figure. And so I really became kind of a mother to myself and to everyone else in my life. And from there, I just got really curious about building connections because I felt so alone. So in school, I started to deepen my relationships with more people and I notice how similar all of us are. And then once I traveled, I saw people from the other side of the world with the same problems. And I was really curious and how is this possible when we're all so different? And yet when you boil it down, we really carry such similar issues that we're facing. And from there, when I moved to Australia, I got into yoga, and that's when I learned about trauma, and that really opened up my eyes. And then I got introduced to the nervous system world, and it just impacted me so greatly that I knew I had to share. And I also lost two friends to suicide when they were only like 21, 22 years old. And I lost a few other people to mental health issues. And so that also highlighted the problem we have with being vulnerable and the truth that we're facing and the issues we're going through. So I knew that I didn't want to go in the corporate world and that I needed to do something in this field around community and connection. And it just slowly came together. I left Australia. The last thing I did was volunteer at a holistic health retreat. And my roommate was this gorgeous woman, Daisy, and she was a life coach and she was telling me what she does. And I was blown away because I realized that's what I'm doing every day for my friends anyway. So why don't I do this? And that's kind of where the journey started. And I've just always been obsessed with love and think it's the most beautiful gift of this life. And so I knew that I wanted to help people with that. And so I really just started learning so much about love. And now it excites me a lot. And with that, when I lived in Bali, I started to learn more about embodiment and how the body impacts us and how so much is stored in our body and not just our mind. And I started to see ridiculous, like immense, beautiful results from doing this body work that I wanted to share it with more women. And it's just been, I've seen the impact on my clients and it's so beautiful. So I also added that into the field and it's just been amazing. Like I just love to help people and yeah.
Well, You started off, you said that you were a single child grew up with your father, which that dichotomy in and of itself is kind of unique. How did that impact you as a child growing up? I have sisters, and I've helped plenty of female clients. I understand the hardship and the trauma that being just a female young adult in and of itself
Mhm.
brings oftentimes. I also understand how cruel children can be oftentimes, especially women. They can be kind of catty. And having a degree in psychology as well, I'm always fascinated by the human brain. So, how did your upbringing affect you as a young girl?
In so many ways. I was very shy, very quiet. I was super reserved. I was just like so confused at the world. I thought I was the problem that my mom left. And then my dad also suffers from bipolar. So I was always walking on eggshells. And so I didn't really speak much. And I know how to listen really well, but like talking was really hard for me because I always was scared to say the wrong thing. And then my dad would yell, even though he never meant to. Um, yeah, there was that element. And then I had this deep fear without knowing of abandonment. And so I was actually scared to get close to people. Yeah, that's what I desired so immensely because I never had that like nurturing motherly figure in my life. Although my mom is present in my life now and we have a beautiful relationship, but she wasn't attentive when I was young. And so lacking that sweet, soft energy as a child, it did make me I mean, I was still pretty cutie, sweetie, but I also had this a huge protection around me, this huge hard shell around my heart. And I used to be super blunt and a little bit too direct. And I just didn't have that softness in me because I was never demonstrated it. So yeah, it shaped me in a lot of ways, but I would say those are the main ones.
It's amazing that you say that because if anyone is to watch you online or connect with you at your retreats or as a coach, now obviously social media and what people see is only a part of the story, obviously. But if anyone were to ever connect with you in any fashion, all they see is an outgoing, loving, joyous person.
Mm,
And to overcome what you did in your childhood, you have a choice. You can either
yeah.
stay hard, or you can find ways to soften that. What was the catalyst for you to choose the path of softness?
Yeah, it's definitely a choice. I mean, I truly feel like it was something inside me because when I think about what was happening back then, I just had this deep curiosity for life, I think, and I just knew somewhere inside me, I really can't describe it, that there had to be more than what I was given. And, I did see some things role modeled through some of my friends' parents' relationships and a little taste of different things that I experienced that I was like, okay, if that's out there in the world, somehow it must be possible for me to access myself. And with, there's always a almost positive side of trauma with my mom leaving so young and my dad being an only child, my dad working a lot. I had to grow up super fast. And with that, that meant I take action. I know if I need something or want something, I need to do it for myself. So with that energy, it kind of shaped me and my ability to go after the things and to stay really curious and to make things happen, because if I weren't to make it happen, it wasn't going to happen in my life. So that's where the good side of my trauma came in. And I know that doesn't happen for everyone with trauma, but that's just what happened for me. Yeah.
You, my son went to Tacoma for culinary to after he finished culinary school here in Arizona, and so we've visited the Seattle area. It is not what I would call the easiest of places to grow up.
Yeah.
What was your childhood? What was your experience as someone trying to find her way in that environment?
It was hard. I mean, the weather itself, like, since I found the sunshine after I was able to have the freedom to, I started in Arizona with college. I have never, like, besides now in Lisbon, gone back to the cold weather because it just is invigorating. Like, the sun is the best feeling ever. So, yeah, it was hard. And I wasn't even aware of it at the time because I just thought that was normal to feel, this heaviness and density because the weather is so effective of that. And also, there's this thing called the Seattle freeze where people are very cold and not so friendly. Like when you walk on the street, not everyone's saying hi and welcoming you, and there's not this warm energy. And I think that has to, once again, kind of do with the weather. And it's also become a very large tech city, or Amazon, Boeing, Google. There's all these huge offices there. So yeah, it was hard because after I left, even like coming back to Seattle, I left when I came back from Australia. I came home and I was so excited, and it was just like I was not connecting with anyone. I did not feel good there. It just felt really isolating and really hard, like very lonely.
And again, that speaks a lot to who you are to overcome. I mean, you overcame the environment, you overcame the house situation, and you
Mm.
chose to help others embrace who they are. And I know you work a lot with women. I've seen photographs and videos of your retreats, and there's
Mm.
such love and energy in the room. Like, how did you bring that out and help others to embrace that? Because I know, just from watching your retreats or just seeing the videos, for women to step into their femininity, and I've interviewed enough women and worked with them in my coaching business. For women to step into their femininity and embrace that part of themselves is not an easy journey for many. So how do you work with that to get them to that level that is shown online?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I had to find it within myself, and it really happened through relationships. And it especially happened when I lived in Australia. I was gifted the most amazing woman of all ages that just came into my life and loved me in a way that I've never been loved before, and showed me what it's like to be loved, especially by a stranger, and who instantly became family. And that ingrained something so deep into my body that let me access this level of love. And then obviously I was able to start to resource it for myself. And from there, I got really good at building connections and community, and I started to recognize, oh, it's actually so quick. It's so easy to build a deep connection quickly. It just takes me leading with openness and trust. And most people, we lead with a guarded heart. So when I'm there, just being fully authentic, fully vulnerable, fully open, and sharing myself, that softens other people to do the same and to feel the safety of that non-judgment. That's also something I'm really big on, is releasing judgment and shame. And it's something that's really felt. Like, I'm sure we've all experienced it when you meet someone and all of a sudden you're just like pouring out your heart. You feel really safe to share everything with them. And you meet someone else and you're just super in your mind. You're very anxious. You don't feel comfortable. And it really comes down to an embodiment piece. So during my events, I carry this energy of like, I have felt it all. I have gone to the depths of every emotion, every feeling. I have heard every crazy story. There is nothing that is too much that you could share with me that would ever make me judge you or make me feel like you're too much, or something that I was like appalled at. You just, there's no such thing as embarrassment in my space. And of course, I don't even have to say that half the times, but it's just the energy I feel because I've really gone there within myself. And then I lead with that, with vulnerability. I lead with these stories and these my experiences, and I connect people immediately. Something that I find most group spaces don't do is bring connection into the group. So like I'm immediately connecting the girls, having them do deep exercises, intimacy exercises together, and this just allows us to see like how human we all are. And I break that from the beginning, because once we realize, okay, we're all facing the similar problems, then we all feel comfortable to be ourselves and to soften. Once we know it is safe, that like we're not the odd one out or the black sheep anymore, or all these, stories we carry within ourselves.
A friend of mine, and what you do is a beautiful thing, and it's a great gift to give to others. A friend of mine studied over in Thailand, and she does Thai
Mm.
massage, and
Oh,
she always talks about how we carry issues in our tissues, and by
yes.
doing these releases, it releases that trauma from your body. And I've seen it up close and personal. I've seen it done. So I truly believe I've seen people who have released that trauma, who are suddenly physically softer people, transformative in their face and their eyes and their expression. Um, how is the somatic yoga that you do similar to the Thai massage that she does?
So it's somatic, and all
Somatic.
somatic means
Sorry.
it's okay. So all somatic means is body based. So it's being and discovering through your body. And so it's kind of like that's the big umbrella, and everything falls under that: breath work, yoga, massage, all things can be elements of that somatic work. And there's so many different ways to access it, but the main point is being connected to your body. And with that, you can start to uncover so much. Like it first happened to me in a yoga class where the teacher was like, stay in this pose and breathe. And I wanted to scream at her. I was so annoyed. I'm like, are you joking me? We've sat in this pose for so long. Like, we do not need to stay here longer. And I felt all the frustration. And I was like, you know what? Fine. I'll take one more breath. And as soon as I did that, I just started bawling, crying. And I was releasing, and I'm like, why am I releasing this yoga class? And I was confused, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to surrender into this. Like, I heard other people experiencing things. And then I checked my phone, and a year from that day is a year I was in this crazy car accident. So I was like, whoa, there is something there. My body is clearly storing things. And then I read The Body Keeps Score, and there's so many other books, but I just started to experience through the nervous system. I started to understand that what all that trauma is too much, too soon, and too fast. So to unwind that and to undo it, you have to slow down and connect to your body and allow your system to experience the sensations, which are the physical feelings in the body, to the fullest degree. And when you do that, it eliminates them. It allows them to transmute and transform. And all of a sudden you're releasing these things that you're just carrying. And signs of carrying that, or of having your body store emotions, are through tension, tightness. There's all these ways that the body is talking to us, but we don't understand the language of the body.
And it is different in each person, and it holds its space in each person. And so, as you're in this group session, how are you not a one size fits all? Because you're not, but how do you differentiate that for people?
Well, I'm teaching them to like I kind of just touched on, I'm teaching them to learn the language of their body. I'm teaching them to get curious about what's happening in their body, and I guide them into their own bodies, and things start to come up in different shapes and forms for everyone, but there's always usually something inside of everyone. So I'm able to show them by building that relationship with their own bodies and guide them through with several different kinds of tools and exercises to access different sensations and releases. And sometimes I also take them through my somatic embodiment flow, which is I break down each emotion so we can feel it by its own. So we can feel anger separate from sadness, which are often entangled, and then we can feel joy. And I take them through this flow that allows them to just feel each emotion separately. And I guide them to access these memories so that they can tap into the feeling of that and express it. And sometimes it's not always accessible depending on how numb you've been, or whatever. There's so much I teach them about that. But then in that, it's like, okay, you understand that another thing about the body is you can access the nervous system through imagination. You can think about a time when you were hurt, and like you're going to feel that hurt in your body. It's right there. It's always accessible. So yeah, everyone's needs something different, but at the same time, like guiding them to access those things that are blocking or in the way, it's pretty easy for us to all drop into that because it's really right at the surface.
And when you're working separately at your retreats or your sessions one on one with the females, how is that different from when you're working with a couple? Because you're not only a female embodiment coach, you're a love embodiment coach, um, and you teach couples how to keep that honeymoon phase going, and how to deepen their intimacy and build that trust factor that all relationships need. So again, from a man's point of view, men respond and act a little differently, but deep down,
Yes.
we're all looking for the same thing, love and care, but it's harder for men to bring that emotional side out. So, how is it different when you're working with a couple then?
Yeah, so in the one-to-one sessions, it's really beautiful because I can completely customize and personalize it, whether it's just a female coaching client or the couple. And oftentimes I work with the couple individually. So sometimes I do offer like a special couple session where they're both there, but I'm not necessarily like a couples coach. But through teaching the woman or the man different skills, it allows them to have their partner show up in a new way, especially as a woman, to express your emotions without projecting and blaming onto them. That allows the man to really hear you and understand, and possibly access some parts of himself that he wasn't able to, and also teaching women how to understand men better so that they can access these parts of themselves, because men have their feelings are way deeper than ours. Like, you guys, it's not at the right there at the top. Like, for us, we're like so on it, we know what we're feeling, there's so much feeling, but that's not the top focus for you guys. And so I teach women to create more space so that the man has time to get to those feelings, and also asking him different questions besides his feelings, because even using words like what are you thinking, or what does it seem like, can help, because it feels more tangible for you guys, versus like when you ask them what do you feel, you guys are like, well, I don't know what I feel. So it's
Right.
like yeah. Yeah, just giving the education around that.
Well, men, society tend to only allow us to feel anger.
Yep.
They shape us so that the rest of feelings are taboo or put down, and
Mhm.
so at a young age we learn to hide them and bury them and try, deal with them ourselves. And
Yeah.
unfortunately we carry them in awful ways throughout our life. I just went on my own alchemist journey last year, and the things that I thought I had dealt with earlier in life, because I had acknowledged them and understood them and addressed them, was vastly different than actually healing from them and addressing them. And it wasn't until my wife, we've been together 10 years now, it wasn't until she gave me the safe space to be vulnerable, to shed
Mm.
a tear, to show emotion, that I was able to willingly dig deeper to release the trauma and become more connected with my emotions,
Mm.
other than anger. And it does
Mm.
take a lot more work, because men need to be heard and understood by their partner. And when we don't, we get frustrated, and that shows up in anger. And we have to learn a whole different way of communicating.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to help couples understand that, is such a huge service to so many.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. Like, men have just been given such a bad rap, and patriarchy has a huge impact on men. And I think society is always just soothing the woman. And I'm not a feminist. I'm very much equal. Like, I think we're both so important. And yeah, it's like we don't understand how much pain men have to carry, and how much struggle they carry, and how much numbness you guys have been carrying your entire lives. And you guys are constantly misunderstood. One of my favorite mentors, Alison Armstrong, always talks about how women treat men like a hairy woman. We are expecting them to show up and talk to us and speak like a woman, yet we want them to be a man. And we're just never understanding their true intentions. We think they're always doing the worst and trying to hurt us. And it's like, no, that you guys are always trying to make us happy and trying to, take care of us. And we just misinterpret everything because we don't understand how differently we both operate. And it's something I had to learn through experience, through showing up so poorly in relationship and emasculating my partner, my ex, so badly, and like getting the worst version of him and wondering, okay, why am I bringing out this version of him? And I was like, okay, I gotta learn more about men here. And I just went on a deep dive, and then I was fascinated, and I just felt so much shame and so much guilt for all that I did. But it's like, okay, well, this is what it teaches us, and this is how we're role modeled from our moms, how they treat, and she treats, blah blah blah. So it just felt like part of my mission, and then growing up with a single dad, it's like I've always loved men. I used to never have girlfriends. I actually used to not like women. So I always had this like soft spot for men anyways, but now it's like a whole different perspective on it.
It's wonderful that you actually took the time to dive in, because we, at our core, basically are still all hunter gatherers, and the
Yes.
men is still trying to provide and do well by his woman and be, quote unquote, the man of the house. There's still
Mhm.
that underlying patriarchal dichotomy. And I love it, like in our household, my wife and I, we don't have gender roles like
Mm,
one cooks and one cleans and you do this. No, we do it all as a partnership. But
mm.
it's taken, even 10 years into the relationship, it's taken us a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
work and effort to learn how to just communicate,
Oh.
and not talk to each other, but communicate, so that one of the mistakes that I find that we've made and that I see others make is that we want our partner to respond to us in the way we want responded, and we want to talk to them in our language instead of theirs. And
Mhm.
learning that the two love languages and the two response languages are different, and there's a
Mm.
vast difference between hearing and listening.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's something my partner and I are addressing right now. It's yeah, how to actually listen to understand versus listening to prove your point, and remembering that we are on the same team. And when we're both triggered, when any two couples or any two humans are triggered going at each other, it is so hard. It is very rarely productive, and it brings out the worst in you. And it's like someone has to break the cycle and be responsible and say, we need to pause here and come back to this in a moment, because yeah, communication is the most important part of relationships, and it's the hardest because we both are coming you're trying to combine two separate lives with a whole different experience versus trauma, communication, all these different things, and come together, and you're just constantly misunderstanding each other, misinterpreting, and so it's like your needs are not being met. How did you not know I needed this? It's like all these things are combining your lives with someone else, and it takes time. It is not an overnight process, and it really takes presence, and conflict repair is essential to that never ending honeymoon phase. It's like you really got to learn how to move through that, not sweep things under the rug, not avoid it, not have a resolution where you just build this separation, and this tension just keeps growing because you're not addressing it. Like all these things go wrong when we don't clear up the communication, and it's not easy. It is not fun at times. It is
No.
like it is so uncomfortable, and nobody likes it. Neither partner is enjoying it, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
And when you do, that's when the intimacy comes. Like connection is a portal to intimacy, because on the other side it's like, oh, okay, I feel more love now I understand you better, and it's like, but we forget that in the moment, but yeah, it does
Well,
bring that.
the thing that I've found in my own personal relationship is that we each try to respond how based on how others have responded to the situation with us, instead of
Yes.
how our partner is going to respond, because like you said, they come at it with a whole different set of experiences, and so we preemptively think that that's going to be the same outcome, and so then we're in a fight
Mhm.
about something that was never even going to happen. And in we try to defend our position, so we're answering to defend instead of respond to what was actually being said, which
Mhm.
psychologically screws up what we actually heard anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. It's hard, and in the moments it's hard to catch it too, because then you're triggered, and then when you feel that, then you're like, it is so hard to stay in your heart and to really just listen. Okay, right now he's actually bringing up the past, which has nothing to do with me, but he's taking it onto me, so then I'm feeling, but to like be the bigger person and to call it out in the moment, and it's also their responsibility to say, actually, hey, so there's so many layers, and it's like you said, like it's just not, it takes time, and it takes such deep self-awareness and reflection. And that's why it's really important, if you are listening to this podcast and if you're on this journey, you have to be with someone that is also growth minded. You have to be with someone that is also willing to take responsibility, to have self awareness, to take self accountability, and to look at their stuff, because both of your things are going to come up. And relationships are the ultimate mirror. They're going to show you everything you don't want to see and that you do want to see about yourself. But they also are going to be reflected that too. And if they can't take that responsibility and have that awareness to look at, okay, what's my part in this? Then you're never gonna find that resolution, and it won't work out long term, I don't believe, because one person can't be doing all the work. It definitely requires both people to be doing that.
Absolutely. It has to be a partnership. I tell people all the time, love and relationships is not a 50-50 deal, because what if I don't like the 50% you're giving? It has to be 100-100,
Mhm.
in effort. And I find oftentimes my wife and I, what one of the things that we're arguing about is who's being nice to the other. Not are you being nice, but you're trying to do something for your partner, and
Mhm.
because of their independence and strong-willed nature too, they're not willing to accept that help as love and help. They're accepting it as squashing their independence. And so we find one of our biggest arguments is who's being too nice to the other. And it's been a learning curve to balance the fact that we are on the same team. We are
Mm.
not squashing the other's independence. We just love and care about each other enough to want to help and do stuff, for the other person. And I think
Yes.
that
And
comes from the man's society too, of always having to be the one to
oh yeah,
to
the
do
lone
that.
wolf. Yeah,
Right.
the lone wolf archetype for men for sure. And I also had that as a woman. It's not just men or women. I very much was a lone wolf my whole life because I couldn't depend on anyone. Like my mom left me. If my mom's gonna leave me, anyone could leave me. So I to this day know exactly how to do everything on my own. I'm extremely resourceful. I'm extremely independent, and thus I had to learn even like a huge journey to soften and reach my feminine. And that's why I created Soft Girl Season, which is one of my pre-recorded courses that helps women to soften, to receive. When your man is trying to provide for you or give you or take care of you, most women do not know how to accept it, because I sure didn't, and I find it in so many of my clients. So this program was developed to help women to actually see, like, it's okay to accept help. It doesn't mean that you can't do it yourself. It doesn't mean you don't know how to do it yourself. It doesn't mean that they think you are pathetic or weak or any of these silly things we have in our head. And instead, it brings them joy when you let them help you. And I just found that it's such a necessary skill, especially for women to learn, because our actual design is receivership. Like, we're meant to receive, and it's not just like receiving gifts or something. It's like receiving the moment, feeling the pleasure, feeling the joy, and expressing that. Like, we're so good at expressing. And so, yeah, I just think it's a really important skill that women need to develop, and a lot of us haven't, because of this independence, and society has raised us in a very masculine way, every human being. Therefore, we don't know how to receive.
And that is exactly what what our issue is in this household. Neither of us is we're great givers, fantastic
Yes.
givers. We're very poor receivers. And it's interesting because not only are we poor receivers, but then the giver is trying to give in the language that we like to be given to. So now we're
Mhm.
giving in the wrong language and we're receiving in a horrible language, and it's just a lot of relationships are a lot of work, and that's the one thing about society today. You're vastly younger than I am, but I look at my grandparents or my great grandparents generation,
Mm,
and I see people who are together 40, 50, 60 years, and they stuck through the hardships of relationships.
mm,
And today it's such a disposable society. If you don't like the one thing that they said, then you're ready to walk out the door, and you're not willing to put in the work. The one thing that
mhm,
I caveat that with is when I looked at my grandparents, I saw my grandmother. I had two sets of grandparents, like many. One
mhm,
very communicative, very much partnership, and one a very much a dictatorship and an authoritarian, where she never expressed her opinion at all. And I remember as an 18-year-old young man walking out of their house for the very last time, looking at my grandmother and go, I never want a
Mm,
woman like you. You guys have been together 50 years. And I was thinking
mm.
in my head, I never want someone who can't express themselves or stand up for their own opinion or bring something to light. And, I think there has to be that balance between,
Of
not being the
course.
doormat, but yet being strong enough to be a giver and a receiver.
It's hard, yeah, and I don't sadly, most people haven't been role model the perfect parents or like even a healthy man in their life or a healthy woman in their life that actually understands like the com- the true gifts of both sides. So yeah, it's and in that, like you said, it's like okay, I saw that and I knew I didn't want that. So there's also the gift in that. But yeah, it's really sad the suppression that a lot of women have, and also same with men. Like there's so many times when I had this hard problem when my actually even my current partner would present me their truth of like okay he's actually being vulnerable, this is a moment he's being vulnerable with me, and then I shut down because what he's saying I'm like taking it personal, and all of a sudden like now it's about me, and he's like well now I don't feel safe to be vulnerable with you, and this men experience this so much because once again that misinterpretation of them. But men, it's very often for them to not open up because they haven't opened up their whole lives. And then when they finally do, it's either, they could fumble it a little bit or say it really directly, which is super hard for us women to hear sometimes. And then we think there's something wrong with us when really that's not what they're saying. And da 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 da. But anyway, so it just creates this cycle of a lot of us have so much suppression and things we haven't shared within ourselves. And that doesn't create for any sort of healthy dynamics. And it's really important to be able to share in that way and to also receive what your partner is saying.
I think that's a huge point right there. You have to be able to acknowledge and witness, hey, my partner is being vulnerable. Stop making it about me and be that safe
Mhm,
space for them to be vulnerable.
mhm,
Um, we're both psychology majors, or yours is a minor, but you have that background. I've traveled all over the United States and lived many, many places. You've traveled all over the world and lived many places. My sister once asked me, because I would literally throw a dart at a map, wherever it landed is where I'd move, you know.
I love it.
And she's like, "Well, aren't you afraid? Like you're always moving." And I'm like, "No, people are people. If you treat them nice, they'll treat you nice back. If you're an asshole, they're going to be an asshole."
Mm,
Do you find
mm.
that same worldwide, or is there a part of the region where you just wouldn't go again?
Absolutely not. I think people, even more so outside of America, are so friendly. And I've never held the belief that it's hard to make friends or meet people. And I constantly show people that because I've lived so many different places over the world. And I always find my people. I always find really beautiful, warm, friendly, kind people. They exist all over the world. And I bring that also to my clients with relationships. I don't care how small of a town you're in. I had one client who was really stubborn with me. She's like, "You don't understand, Lexi. I live in the smallest town in Canada." And I was like, "I do understand. And you will find your person no matter wherever you're meant to be. You're going to find your person, or, there's so many ways it can happen." And she found the perfect man. And it really truly comes down to belief with that aspect, because I've also met friends that went to Melbourne, Australia, and they're like, "I met the worst people. I don't like the people there." And I had the exact opposite experience. I met some of my favorite humans in the entire world there. So that can happen anywhere. And um, of course, there are some places where maybe it's not so much your people. Like I actually did struggle with that in Seattle, but I still had people that were there. Like you said, there's always going to be nice people if you are nice to them. So I fully believe you can find great people everywhere.
I think that's absolutely true, and I think it's the energy that we bring to it.
Yes.
If I mean, we're all energetic beings, and we're all energy, and your
Mm-hmm.
energy, depending on how in tuned you are with it, can lead your energy can lead before you even enter a room. So
Mm-hmm.
the energy changes once you're in the room, and for someone who you grew up in a single household. You said you were shy. You said you were an
Mm-hmm.
introvert, and now you're a
Mm.
world traveler who's lived all over the world. Like you just came out of your shell in such a fashion that it's
Mm.
contagious. And now you probably, even with the work you do, you probably inspire others to go find other places in the world to explore and live as well. Do you find that your wandering bug is contagious?
Yes, definitely. It's definitely shown people that it's possible. And, it's like the classic thing. If I can do it, you can too. Because yeah, was so shy, so nervous. And it was through traveling. I learned way more. I've got to say, I learned way more in traveling than I did in school. I feel like the life experience is so potent when you travel. It really widens your perspective. You get to understand and learn so much about yourself through understanding and seeing the world. And of course, like back in the day when I was traveling a lot before many people were traveling, they wanted to see what other parts of the world were. And I feel like Americans in specific don't really travel internationally as much. And so it was super inspiring to a lot of people. And I was getting questions. I still get questions to this day about how do you do it? What do you do? And I'm like, you just do it. You got to make the choice and go. You're going to be terrified. I was crying at the airport the first time I did it. You don't get rid of your emotions, but you move through it, you move with them, and you take the leap. If you're really feeling called to move to South Africa, go do it. There's never going to be a perfect timing. There's never going to be all the steps just perfectly aligned for you, but you got to just make that choice and everything will start to fall together. And also, you're going to get a lot of challenges. That's part of it, but it's like how you move with it and through it. And those all strengthen you in such beautiful ways.
Yeah, you have to learn to pivot for sure. And I'm
Oh.
gonna I'm gonna pay you a compliment more than I already have because I really respect your work and who you are. But having watched your journey online, and you've moved from here to there, and you've traveled from here to there. One thing that I will say is that until speaking with you today, I would have
Hmm.
never known you were American. and and you understand what I mean by that, having been a world traveler and seeing other, like when we were in Madrid and Lisbon for our anniversary, um, you saw Americans and then you saw travelers, vastly different. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to compliment you. You would never, at least in what's being viewed online, never know that you're an American. You don't you don't
I
travel
love
like that.
that. I love it. When I was in Bali, people always asked me, like, they always thought I wasn't American either. And I think after I left Australia, I picked up a tiny accent then. But yeah, it's definitely an energy like I don't have that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it comes through and it shows for sure. So,
Mm.
if there are some people out there listening, and whether they're a couple, trying to, deepen their intimacy, or they're just a female who wants to, reconnect with her body, or herself, or her own emotions, what would be a piece of advice that you would give them to help in that journey?
Yeah, for couples, I would say to remember that love is an energy that is constant in your relationship. It is a flow of, it's just like this beautiful stream that is never not flowing. And so when you ever feel that the love between you is a little bit dimmed down or there's more separation, that is a great indicator that there's something that needs to be communicated. So you need to go within and notice, when did that happen? What went down? What need of yours wasn't met? What boundary was crossed? And just take a little bit of time to understand like what your true desires, what the true problem is, not what's on the surface, which oftentimes we go for. And from there, bring it to your partner and come back to connection and let them know your intention is, I want to reconnect with you, baby. I want to feel our love again. And I know it's possible, but clearly there's something that needs to be discussed. And I think in that we can save so many relationships, because the more we hold on to things, the more resentment builds and the more separation and space builds between us. So really taking the time to have those uncomfortable conversations is going to heal your love and keep it like this ever ending flow. And for women connecting to their bodies, it's getting out of your mind. So when you are in a situation where you get triggered or he doesn't text you back or whatever happens, how can you stop the stories in your head, which are addicting and they take you into such dark places, and instead get into your body? You can start this by putting on a song, moving your body, dancing, like just physically landing back in your body, using your hands and like grabbing your body, massaging your body, and know like there's something physically happening in my body this moment. Can I find what is happening? Maybe your tummy is feeling like it's in a knot, or there's heat coming out of your hands, and just start to get curious of what is happening in my body and move the awareness from the mind to the body. And that's going to save you a lot of mental horror.
Love that. I'm going to ask you one final question that I ask all my guests.
Mhm.
What does a warrior spirit or having a warrior spirit mean to Lexi Davis?
It means really never giving up. I feel like that is what comes to me when I hear this. And it's like going after what you want and knowing that it's possible and holding the beliefs, holding the desires. I always had the desire to have the most beautiful, loving relationship, even though I never was role modeled it, but I just kept believing and kept making it happen. And so, this spirit of continuously taking that action and learning and growing and building yourself and creating the life you want, it's so possible for whatever your dreams are.
Well, I love that, and I love the work that you do, and it's very vital and necessary, especially in today's society. So I thank you for joining me today, and thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I just appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This was so beautiful.
And if you would like to connect with Lexi, you can do so on her website, Alive to Enjoy, or on any of the social medias, Facebook and LinkedIn. So we thank you for joining us on this edition of A Warrior Spirit. Be sure to like or subscribe so you catch all of the episodes.